Have you ever reached a point in your marriage where you thought, why am I the only one trying? You're the one starting the conversations. You're the one reading the books. You're the one praying. You're the one trying to make things better. You're the one thinking about the marriage, while your husband seems to be going on with life like nothing is wrong. And after a while, something starts happening inside of you. You get tired. Not just physically tired, emotionally tired. Because it's hard to keep reaching for someone when you're not sure they're reaching back. And eventually, you may start asking yourself, how long am I supposed to keep doing this? Today, I want to talk about that. Not from the position of blaming husbands, and not from the position of telling wives that everything is their responsibility, because it isn't. A marriage involves two people. But after more than 40 years with the same man and 34 years of marriage, I've learned that there are seasons when one person may be more aware of the problems than the other. There are seasons when one person may start changing before the other. And there are seasons when you may feel like you're carrying the marriage by yourself. The question is, what do you do when you feel like you're the only one trying? The first thing I want you to understand is that your husband may not see the marriage the same way you do. That's something I think we sometimes forget. Two people can live in the same house, sleep in the same bed, eat at the same table, and experience the marriage completely differently. You may be thinking, we're disconnected. And he may be thinking, we're fine. You may be thinking, we never spend time together anymore. And he may be thinking, we're together every evening. You may be thinking, he never talks to me. And he may be thinking, I talk to her every day. You see, sometimes the problem isn't that one person doesn't care. Sometimes the problem is that two people have completely different definitions of what connection looks like. And when that happens, the person who feels the disconnection usually becomes the one who starts trying to fix it. That's why you may be the one bringing it up. You're the one who feels the absence. You're the one who notices what's missing. And because you're noticing it first, you may also be the one who starts working on it first. But here's where we have to be careful. Because when you feel like you're the only one trying, resentment can quietly begin growing. You start keeping score. I planned the date. I started the conversation. I apologized first. I suggested counseling. I tried to be affectionate. I tried to make things better. And then you start looking at everything your husband isn't doing. I've been in seasons where my mind could build a whole case. I could tell myself everything I was doing right and everything Jake was doing wrong. And when you stay in that place long enough, you can begin to see yourself as the only person who cares about the marriage. But sometimes that's not the whole picture. Sometimes your spouse is trying in ways you don't recognize. Maybe he isn't talking about the marriage, but he's still coming home. He's still taking care of responsibilities. He's still showing up when you need him. He's still doing things that, to him, represent love and commitment. Now, I'm not saying that's enough in every situation. I'm saying we have to be careful not to define trying only by the things we would do. Because your husband's efforts may not look exactly like yours. This is where I think marriage requires us to slow down and ask a deeper question. Instead of only asking, why isn't he trying? Maybe ask, does he understand what I need? Because sometimes we think we've communicated clearly when we've really communicated through frustration. There's a difference between saying, you never spend time with me, and saying, I miss you. I miss us. I'd really like for us to spend some time together without everything else pulling at us. The first one sounds like an accusation. The second one reveals your heart. And I've learned that when we're hurting, it's very easy to speak from the hurt instead of speaking from the need underneath the hurt. We say, you don't care, when what we really mean is, I need reassurance. We say, you never listen, when what we really mean is, I need to feel heard. We say, you don't want to spend time with me, when what we really mean is, I miss feeling close to you. Sometimes we have to get beneath our own words and understand what we're really asking for. Because when we understand our own need, we have a better chance of communicating it without turning the conversation into a fight. Now, let me say something that I think is very important. You cannot carry an entire marriage by yourself forever. You can change your own behavior. You can change your attitude. You can communicate differently. You can work on healing your own wounds. You can create a healthier atmosphere in your home. You can pray. You can seek wisdom. You can invite your spouse into conversation. But you cannot force another grown person to participate. And I think wives need to hear that. Because sometimes women become so determined to save the marriage that they start trying to control everything. They monitor every conversation, analyze every reaction, push for answers, push for change, push for counseling, push for connection. And without realizing it, the marriage becomes another project they're managing. I've had to learn that there is a difference between doing my part and trying to do somebody else's part too. Those are not the same thing. Sometimes you have to step back and ask yourself, what is mine to do? Maybe your part is changing how you communicate. Maybe your part is healing resentment you've been carrying. Maybe your part is acknowledging something you did wrong. Maybe your part is setting a healthy boundary. Maybe your part is seeking professional help. And maybe your part is simply refusing to keep repeating the same unhealthy pattern. But whatever your part is, do your part. And then allow your spouse to be responsible for his. Something else I've learned is that change in a marriage often doesn't happen at the same speed for both people. One person may have an awakening before the other. One person may realize we can't keep living like this, and the other person hasn't reached that point yet. That can be frustrating because once you see something clearly, you want the other person to see it too. But people don't always arrive at understanding on the same day. There have been things I've learned about myself that I wish I had understood years earlier. I can look back now and see times when I contributed to tension in my own marriage. There were seasons when I would have thoughts building in my mind before Jake even walked through the door. By the time he came home, I already had questions. I already had an attitude. I already had a whole conversation in my head that he hadn't even participated in. And at the time, I thought I was the one trying to fix things. But later, I had to ask myself a hard question. Was I always helping, or was I sometimes adding to the problem? That's not easy to admit, but self-reflection changed me. I began realizing that sometimes the first change in a marriage happens when one person is willing to look in the mirror. Not because everything is their fault, but because the only person you can truly change is yourself. And here's something else. When you start changing, your spouse may not respond immediately. That's hard. You may think, I've been kinder. I've stopped arguing about everything. I've been more patient. I've tried to create peace. So why hasn't anything changed? Because relationships develop patterns over years. And sometimes it takes time for another person to trust that the change is real. If every conversation used to become an argument, and suddenly you're communicating differently, your husband may still be bracing for the argument. If your home has been tense for a long time, it may take a while for peace to feel normal again. Don't mistake slow change for no change. Sometimes people are watching quietly. They're noticing. They're adjusting. They're learning whether this new way of relating to each other is going to last. But I also don't want to give anyone false hope. There are marriages where one spouse truly refuses to participate. There may be repeated betrayal, abuse, addiction, manipulation, untreated serious mental health issues, or destructive behavior that continues no matter how much the other person tries. In those situations, try harder is not always the answer. You may need professional counseling. You may need wise support. You may need boundaries. And if there is abuse or you're unsafe, your safety matters. Marriage should never require you to accept harm in the name of commitment. There's a difference between walking through a difficult season and living inside a destructive pattern. Wisdom is knowing the difference. But for many marriages, the issue isn't that one person doesn't care at all. The issue is that both people have gotten stuck. One is waiting for the other to change, and the other is waiting too. She says, I'll be affectionate when he starts paying attention to me. He says, I'll talk when she stops criticizing me. She says, I'll soften when he changes. He says, I'll come closer when the house feels peaceful. And there you are, two people, both waiting, both hurting, both believing the other person should go first. Sometimes somebody has to decide, I'm going to stop waiting for the perfect response before I become the person I want to be. That doesn't mean you become a doormat. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you stop allowing someone else's behavior to determine your character. You choose how you want to show up. You choose your words. You choose your boundaries. You choose whether you contribute peace or chaos. You choose whether you're going to be honest. You choose whether you're going to seek understanding. That's your power. So what do you do if you feel like you're the only one trying? First, get clear about what trying means to you. What exactly are you asking your spouse to do? Don't just say, try harder. What does that look like? More conversation? More affection? More time together? Counseling? Sharing responsibilities? Be specific. Second, communicate the need underneath the complaint. Instead of, you never care about this marriage, try, I've been feeling disconnected from you, and I miss feeling close to you. Third, look honestly at your own patterns, not to blame yourself, but to ask, is there anything I'm doing that makes connection harder? That's a powerful question. Fourth, notice the ways your spouse may already be showing commitment, even if those ways aren't exactly how you would express it. And fifth, know where your responsibility ends. You can invite someone into healing. You cannot drag them there. You can open the door. You cannot make them walk through it. And I want to leave you with this. Feeling like you're the only one trying can be one of the loneliest places in a marriage. I understand why it makes you tired. I understand why you may feel discouraged. But before you decide that you're completely alone in your effort, slow down. Look again. Talk honestly. Get specific. Examine your own heart. and pay attention to what your spouse is actually doing, not only what he's failing to do. Sometimes you'll discover that he has been trying, just differently. Sometimes you'll discover that he didn't understand how serious the problem felt to you. Sometimes one honest conversation can begin changing the direction of a marriage. And sometimes you'll discover that you really do need additional help. Whatever the answer is, you deserve clarity, not assumptions, not endless guessing. Clarity. After all these years, one thing I know for sure is that marriage goes through seasons. There will be times when you're strong and your spouse is weak. There will be times when your spouse carries more than you do. And there may be seasons when one person sees the need for change before the other. But the hope is that somewhere along the way, you learn to turn toward each other again. I'm Donna. Thank you for sitting with me today. And remember, this is a season, not a sentence.